This is Vince Russo's The Brand.
Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Tragedy. This is case number, I believe, 104. We're talking about the Stone Cold Steve Austin walkout. I'm your co-host, JP John Paz, with the two-man power trip. Of course, joining me is the Colonel himself, the suntan Superman, Angel, the baldy Angel Medina, and of course, the dad bod himself, the dad bod god, the dad bod destroyer, Piers Austin, the bald, beautiful man that he is, as he likes to say. But today we're talking all about Stone Cold Steve Austin and his walkout of the WWF in 2002 and the ripple effect that it created not only for himself but for the business, I believe anyway. But good topic today. Angel, what do you got to say for yourself?
Well, I'm doing pretty good, man. Today is a Saturday for us, man. So, it's a pretty good topic. I'm not going to lie to the fans out there. I mean, I know it, but I'm not really too deep familiar with it because I didn't really care at the time, but this is pretty interesting because John has a lot of knowledge in regards to what he found out. So I'm definitely going to roll off his wave and just watch Piers fall asleep at the same time while we're doing this show. So let's get these sponsors.
Hey, first of all, I've got COVID, all right? So I'm powering through. I'm a professional. I'm here. I'm awake. I just, I don't look the best, but I'm here.
So what's your excuse other times? I don't look the best.
Oh, Angel, I was going to say he's sick, though. Don't you give him a pass?
Mentally, he's mentally sick. You don't get it. That guy's fine. He got a little cold, a little sniffle. See? He's all right. He survives. Oh, well, let's definitely go with this one right here. Sleeves.com, one of the greatest websites out there for any athlete that definitely wants to step their game up on any type of field. They have your arm sleeves. They have the headbands. I don't definitely use them, but I definitely check out those dirty boxes. I have a plethora of them in my bedroom. My girl's very happy because she doesn't know what's going to come out the bathroom for those nights of passion. So definitely check out sleeves.com. Use promo code MWAPOD for 10% off. I'm telling you, you're not going to regret it. I love those dirty boxers. Pierce wears them on his head at parties. John rocks them on wrestling shows. I rock them in the bedroom. MWAPOD, 10% off, sleeves.com.
And check out healthvape.com. If you or someone you know is a smoker or a vapor, get them onto a healthier lifestyle. Check out healthvape.com. Use promo code MWAPOD to check out all of HealthVape's amazing products. All of their products are no nicotine, no addictive or harmful chemicals, and they're vitamin infused. So check out all of their products. Use promo code MWAPOD to get a 10% discount on your final purchase.
Well, just curiosity, in regards to the health vape, which one is the more relaxing one, Pierce? Is it the Restore or is it the Boost?
I'd say it'd be the Boost.
Well, definitely. Thank you for that information. I definitely want to send a get well package to Will Smith. Maybe he needs to chill out. So definitely, that definitely could help him out. So we're definitely going to send him a care package, But anyway, what we're going to be discussing about today, but John, you are the man of the hour. So let's kick it off.
So headed towards the summer of 2002, we're coming up on 20 years that this happened. 20 years ago this happened. And basically kind of led to the end of Steve Austin's wrestling career, if you really kind of think about it. This was going to be the beginning of the end as he walks out on 2 consecutive Raws, and one of which they want him in a King of the Ring qualifier match against Brock Lesnar, who's a rookie at this point, and he's supposed to lose. Now, he shouldn't be in a King of the Ring qualifier, period. He's Stone Cold Steve Austin, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, the biggest name on the roster. Why is he even in the King of the Ring tournament? Makes no sense. Would never happen. Like, you're going to put Hogan in a King of the Ring? I don't think so. Sure, in 96 it made sense when Austin was coming up, but once you win it, you never go back in it. You don't need to win it again. It just so stupid, made no sense, just ridiculous anyway. But then they want him to wrestle Lesnar, who's supposed to be the next guy, the next big thing, on a Raw, and then he's supposed to lose with no build-up. I don't know about this. So that was the start of it, but he does call in to Bite This, which was the show with Kevin Kelly and Dr. Tom, which was, the early age of the internet show, maybe the early podcast, you could say. And he said, creative sucks. They got nothing for me. This is bullshit. It's been like this for a while. It's been building. So I don't know. What do you kind of think? He walks out and he doesn't want to do business. Says creative sucks.
Well, I mean, they could have definitely done a spin on that. I mean, if I was, I'm just thinking outside the box. I mean, if I was Stone Cold Steve Austin, I know he didn't have to be in the King of the Ring, but he could have definitely made some type of angle where he goes, I'm the best. I'm using Bret Hart's philosophy. I'm the best. I'm the greatest. You guys suck. You know what? I'm going to take it to the next level. I'm putting myself in the King of the Ring to show you that I'm going to run through these MF mother, like saying and kick it to the next level. And they could have definitely done a push, not a push, but like definitely like he could have won it again to show like, yeah, see, I told you I'm the best, and then done some major angles after that. I mean, I could see that type of playing out. What do you think?
They wanted him to do the favors to Lesnar. That was the whole
I
point.
know, but I'm just saying that that's would have been my stipulation. If I was one of the top guys, like, oh yeah, I'll do it, but this is how I want it to play out. If that's not how it's going to play it, I'm not doing it. I mean, that's just how I'm looking at it, to keep myself strong, knock everybody out of the King of the Ring, and then I could figure out what I could do with Lesnar.
Well, prior to that, not prior, but Vince McMahon, he said that he sat down prior to the night of Austin walking out. And he said, he laid it out on the line. He goes, sometimes when you deal with talent, you have to sell them on the idea. You have to sell them on the idea that they've got some input into it. They've got some creative aspect going into this. And he goes, that's what I had to do with Steve. But one of the other things I found really interesting, he said, and I believe he may have said this out of frustration and anger at the time, but he said Steve Austin was the most difficult person he has ever worked with.
No. He could say that all he wants, but the thing is that when you're in the business and you get to a point when you're making some financial gain, like when you have Undertaker money, when you have Austin money, Shawn Michaels money, you really don't have the I don't give a fuck factor. You have more of a ballsy, like I ain't doing it, or I'm walking off. When you're first starting off in the business, you have no choice because you have no money. I mean, you're not living the lifestyle that you want to live. So you have to say yes. You do what's good for business. But once you get to that level and you have that sort of power, because you can walk away. I mean, how much was Austin worth at the time, John, you think?
Oof.
I mean,
millions upon millions.
So
yeah.
He could walk off. He could go, you know what? Yep. I'm out. I'll take my own flight back. I could take my private jet. He has that power. When you have that power, you could do what the fuck you want. So of course that's why he walked off, and he could go any company. He could have gone to Japan. He could have gone anywhere, but he didn't have to do shit. He had money. So I'm just saying, like, when Vince said, oh, he was the most difficult person, no, because the difficult person was Ultimate Warrior when he told you he ain't going out there until you pay him. The most difficult person was Nails when he fucking choked him out and said, hey, how are you doing this shit? So
Jeff Jarrett.
So don't say Austin was the most difficult person, because you were having a lot of difficult people who had had money in their pockets that didn't give a fuck. So I disagree.
Let me
Hogan.
Let me throw this scenario out, because when was Austin's last match?
Like WrestleMania 19 against The Rock.
Yeah, so that's like 2003, right?
Yeah, April 2003.
So do you think that, like, after all that shit that went through, Austin goes, you know what, I want to come back, blah, 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 and they said, okay, no worries, we'll give you one final run, but then that's it, you have to retire? Like, do you think it could have got to that stage where it was like, you know what, fuck it, we'll give you one last run, but we don't want to deal with you again on any type of like permanent basis?
No, they can't say that to him. You can't say that to
money to them.
That's what I'm saying. Don't shit. I mean, you're thinking too, and I'm not making fun of you. You got to think like that's really one dimensional, because again, that's why they didn't get rid of Shawn Michaels. That's why they didn't get rid of.
I'm only throwing out.
I'm just saying, like, and I'm going off the scenario. I'm just saying these guys, even though like Shawn Michaels was I'm not saying a dope addict, but he was having his issues. Undertaker, made his run completely. I mean, at a point in your career where you're like, man, what else can we do with this motherfucker? We did everything. There's nothing else to do. Remember back in the days, like, hey kid, we're gonna rent you out to another territory because we really have nothing for you right now. We have no ideas. They didn't want to let that fresh. They kept motherfuckers on the contract. Remember that time they had Shawn Michaels like for years on the contract, paying him John like what, 500,000 or something?
Probably,
yeah, just to stay home. They won't let you go. So I mean, yeah, that's just
Even back in the day in the territory days, like Dusty in Florida, he's the man, he's the best. They would
Mm.
loan him out to Vince McMahon Sr., the WWF, and he'd have a little run up north, and they'd bring him back fresh and start a new angle. I mean, they always do stuff like that, but like Austin, he's worth way too much money to them to do that. But it was weird. The creative was so bad in 02, and you got to put it on Vince and whoever else is doing creative at this point. I mean, they got nothing for Austin. He's in a King of the Ring qualifying match. Like, if you think about it logically, and Austin even said it to JR. He called him. He said, listen, think about it logically. It makes no sense. Come up with something else. Nah, the old man wants you to do it, meaning Vince. That's what he wants you to do. He wants that to be the match. He's like, makes no sense. Come up with something else. They couldn't have come up with something else better. I mean, Austin begging them to come up with something else. That's how bad. He was saying they were creatively bankrupt. They sucked. And he's just flat out ripping creative, which is 100% Vince and 100% the rest of those guys, the writers. Like, what the hell? You couldn't come up with something better? The biggest name of all time?
Yeah,
you know what? King of the Ring qualifying. Like, you think Hogan would come back in the Hogan era in his prime in the heyday and be like, oh, you got we're really building up. I don't know, we're really building up Hercules. He's going to be in this King of the Ring qualifier. Like, that's the match. Or you know what I mean? Like, he'd be like, no, hell no, come up with something else. Like, all right, we'll give you this guy. Like, they would have come up with something else, but they couldn't have told.
That's like saying
come up with something else better. Like, what?
But let me ask you this, right? Stone Cold Steve Austin would be at the point in that career he could turn around and say, hey, you know what I don't want to work with like this guy, and like I want to do it, whatever. You know what I mean? He could have done that, and that's where I think.
Give me a second.
Oh, give him a second, okay. But he was supposed to be. Remember, he was supposed to be feuding with Jeff Jarrett in '99, and he literally said no. So, like, okay, we'll come up with something else. How about Triple H? Okay, I'll feud with Triple H. Like, they could have done the same thing. For some reason, they just neglected to do that, and they didn't want to do that. I have no idea why. Like, they wouldn't come up with it. I don't know why Vince was so dead set on it, but it's just, I just keep coming back to it. Like, King of the Ring qualifier. The guy won the King of the Ring 6 years earlier. He doesn't need to do a freaking King of the Ring. That's for like the upper mid card to work their way into the main event and earn the title shot and earn the world title match. So if Lesnar's going to go through the match, okay, RVD would be a perfect guy to go up against. Test, who like Hardcore Holly, whoever. Like, those are the guys, not Steve Austin, who is your top guy.
I do apologize. I just wanted to. My daughter was saying goodbye. I'm not going to see her all day. Just wanted to tell her, give her a hug. So that's why I stepped off for a second. All right, man. So where were we at?
Well, look, I just wanted to say this, man. Like, and I've heard like this being mentioned before, and I think this was mentioned by Triple H as well. And he's once said, like, it's one thing to say, okay, creative sucks, I don't want to do that. Okay, cool. Well, what ideas do you have? Like, come with something else. Hey, I don't like that, but what about this? What if we did it this way? Austin going back and saying, I don't like that, I don't want to do it, come back with something else. At that stage of Austin's career, being the veteran, being the main event star, being the biggest star in the business in since Hogan, and probably bigger than Hogan in some degree, couldn't sit there and go, you know what, let me throw out some ideas. Was it like, you know what I mean? Like, why wasn't he sitting there going, yeah, okay, creative sucks. This is what I want to be doing. This is how I see my character being portrayed. This is who I see myself having a feud with. But instead of, he just went, yeah, it sucks. Give me something better.
Yeah. He definitely maybe instead of keep saying like, what else do you got for me? Like, he should have came up with something for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean he could have, but I mean again, once you get that mindset of like, man, look, man, that sucks. It's not about Brock Lesnar. It's about like what you're presenting him with. Presenting him on a platter. Like, okay, that doesn't look appealing. I mean, when Rhino first came to ECW, they presented him like, hey, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do that with him. So it made sense. It was building up to a solid story, and he was new to the company. It's not like Paul was making sense to the story of building Rhino to go, okay, I could see a big angle and a good storyline building it. But you're not going to bring something like that that's, and we're not going to say character, because we used to like, you're going to kill my gimmick, man. You're going to kill my, it's not going to work, So yeah, Austin should have been more proactive and said, no, this is what I want to do from point A to point B. But he was just, like you said, he was just like, no, I don't like it. What else you got? So kind of like, he was letting them like, he was not giving them enough meat to go off like, hey, that's a good idea. Yeah, we could work with that. We could do something like that or spin it like this. He was not putting too much input. So he's at fault.
at this point, though, he's going through a lot of supposedly mental and physical problems. He's got some injuries. He might have some demons, some substance abuse issues, or maybe some alcohol problems. He's kind of, he's been running through the rigor. I mean, he's the top guy for the last 5-6 years. He's really been, riding the lightning bolt, as he loves to say, riding on the edge of the lightning bolt, and just, really being the top guy. And then all of a sudden, Hogan comes back in the fray. They're really pushing the Rock. You got the NWO, and WrestleMania 18 comes along. He doesn't want to work with Hogan. He doesn't think the match will be good. He doesn't want to, for whatever reason, he does not want to work with Hogan. Hogan then does not want to work with him. Hogan would love to work with The Rock. The Rock would love to work with Hogan. Kind of a misstep by Austin, because if you're Austin, you really got to make a play for that match. He thought that because he was the man, he main evented WrestleMania 17, WrestleMania 15, WrestleMania 14. The company's on his back. He's the man. He's the top dog. He thought, like, without me at the top of the card, what are you going to do? Kind of almost underplaying Rock and Hogan for a little bit. And then he realized, I guess it was his downfall. They just put him against Scott Hall. And that was going to be, kind of like the upper mid card feud. Really, even though Austin's such a big name, Hall's a big name, it's not as big as Rock Hogan, not even close to as big as Rock Hogan. Icon versus icon. They're getting the poster treatment. They're treated like the main event. That was really the first, to me, big misstep of Austin. Like, you could have had Hogan, could have been WrestleMania. I don't care if the match wouldn't have been as good as Rock Hogan, or wouldn't have been that great. You want to say maybe the chemistry, maybe you didn't like Hogan from some of the comments that he made about Austin, about how he got over for only a short period of time. Hogan's over for a long period of time. Hogan didn't have to curse, didn't have to flip people off to get over. Hogan took a lot of, digs, and it could have been partly true, but he did take some digs at Austin. There's no doubt about it. There was some heat there. There's no question about it. Another guy that you're the top guy ever, and Vince is claiming that Austin is, and Austin saying he's the biggest. So there's definitely tension between Austin and Hogan, no doubt about it. But to not take that match and not force yourself into that match was a huge mistake. And I think that led to some creative frustration, because it's like, okay, he doesn't want the match. I guess Rock is the man now. I guess he's the big guy we're pushing. Then he sees Hogan win the title. And then, I could see frustration really, really starting to pick up for Austin, just for creatively. It's like, shit, I'm not the top guy around here. Hogan's kind of taken the place, and Rock is really the number one guy. It's like, damn, I thought I'm number one guy. It's, Vince will move away from somebody that quickly. Look at Austin when he was on top. Michaels was the guy, right, for that period of time. Michaels is the champion. Boom, Michaels is gone. Oh, throw him away, discard him. Austin, you're the man now. He was starting to see that on the flip side happening to him.
Well, just curiosity. I mean, you say that Austin was the top guy, but I always consider the Taker the top guy of the company, regardless of who was the.
Really interesting.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, he's always there. I mean, everybody respects him. He's the main dude. Yeah, you're the top guy, but it kind of pyramids down.
But it was never built on him. Like, the whole company went during the Hogan era, it's built like on Hogan, and everything falls into place. When during the Austin era, everything is built on him and falls into place. Even The Rock, I consider a little bit less, even though he was starting to get that big push. I always consider him a little less than Austin, because Austin made The Rock. Like, you know what I mean? He's making these guys on his way. So I think it always trickled down. It was always like Austin and Undertaker kind of right underneath. Like, he was never like the big star they build around. They build a cool storyline around him, but he was never like the top guy where they're building the whole company around him, like they did with Austin.
See, I never looked at it like that Austin built The Rock, because it's like, for me, it was always like him, Triple H, and Austin were like The Rock, Triple H, and Austin were always at that similar sort of level at the same sort of time, that IC title mid-card level. And then they sort of gradually, within like 6 to 12 months of each other, went into that main event level sort of side of things. But I definitely think, obviously, the matches that they had between Austin and Rock were absolutely iconic. But as far as like, The Rock being built off of Austin, I can see where you're coming from on that, but I got to disagree to a somewhat on that a little bit.
Oh,
well,
yes.
Just look at the way it was built, though. Austin is the man of the company. He's feuding with Vince. Like, he's got that feud.
Yep.
Dude Love, Undertaker, Kane, all those feuds. And The Rock is slowly building himself. Turns heel, turns face, then turns heel again, joins the corporation, feuds with Austin at WrestleMania 15, feuds with him at Backlash, and then obviously feuds with him for a while. But it's like, even when he was the IC champ, Rock was slowly a little bit feuding with Austin. So it's like, little by little, he's getting built up through Austin and really kind of getting a rub from Austin from feuding with him, to me.
Yeah, no, I can see that point of view. Fair enough. But like, do you think like, all right, if you look at it like from this sort of scale, right? And I think we did this the other week with Scott Hall and Austin. If we've got like The Rock and Austin, who is the biggest star?
To me, in wrestling, Austin for sure. Rock, his run, if you look at it, very short. And I know people could say Austin's was short too, but if you looked at the run all the way on top and the tippy top, and like everything relies on him, Rock only had that short window of time, and it was only really because Austin was injured with that neck injury. If Austin was there, who knows? I mean, maybe they're neck and neck, but I always consider Austin wrestling wise higher. Obviously, popularity wise, Hollywood, everything else, Rock probably surpasses everybody. I mean, it's just crazy.
Sure.
He's number one star, and action star, movie star, whatever you want to say. But wrestling wise, I always considered Austin a notch above, and I always considered Hogan a notch above Austin. So that's just my wrestling pecking order.
Okay. Well, I mean, like I said, Austin had the power. Austin was the guy who had everything in the palm of his hands. The 316 shirts were selling like crazy. He still sells out like crazy with the NWO.
Yep.
I mean, the guy is well respected in the business. He could, he's been gone for so long, but he's still relevant. Even when he walks out, the fans, the arena explodes, almost the same as The Rock. I mean, so like I said, man, Vince didn't have any power to control Steve because there's nothing you can say to him that to say, oh well, you got to do this compared to other guys. If you don't like it, then you're fired.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Angel, as a worker, right? So, around this time, you're 2002, you're busting, still trying to like make it in the world of professional wrestling, and then you see one of the biggest stars in the world just turn around and spit, have a dummy spit, and just basically take his ball and go home. Like, what is that like? What do you think of that mentally? Seeing something like that happen, where it's like someone like you, or even other people who are in the WWE system at the time, in that mid card level, who would bust their fucking balls to have that opportunity that Austin has gotten, and Austin supposedly being a locker room leader, just turning around going, "I don't like what's going on, so I'm gonna fucking go home." Like, what would be the mentality of boys in the locker room? What would be your mentality at that
It
time?
just depends, man, because it was just like the RVD situation when we weren't getting paid and we were doing pay-per-views, and RVD did the match at the Hammerstein Ballroom against, I think it was Jerry Lynn. John, was that correct? At the
I was going
Hammerstein
to say,
Ballroom?
I think you're talking about Jerry Lynn, that match.
Yeah. So you remember at that time he never showed up. He never came back prior to that pay-per-view because he wasn't getting paid. He wasn't getting any money. So what did Paul do? Paul scrounged up the money that he needed to pay RVD and for that night, and the money he owed them, paid them, and he performed. So a lot of the boys in the back, as we were looking at, like, you're not mad at RVD, which is like, are you fucking serious? We're busting our ass, we're showing up on time, and we're not getting paid, but then he's able to scrounge up the money for RVD. So using that as an example, we were mad. Now that RVD is just a situation. So for Austin to leave, my thoughts would have been like, how was it affecting me? You know what I mean? It was affecting us because we weren't getting paid, and he scrounged up the money out of nowhere and paid them. So they showed our worth. Like, oh, really? You could pay him, but you couldn't pay us? Again, I'm just telling you how we felt at the time. Now, the Austin situation, he left. It didn't affect me because my thought pattern would be like, wow, he left. Okay, I still got to do what I got to do, to show the boss that I'm a team player and I'm willing to, I'm here. So that wouldn't affect me either way. The boys would have been like, well, he has an ego, fuck him or whatever. But from my thought prospect, my thought would be, it's not affecting me. I got to do what I got to do to get that to that spot. So,
To me, like Undertaker was mad at him, The Rock is mad at him. So it's one of the things where it's like, okay, the guys are mad because he left and didn't come up with a solution. Like, you never walk out in the company. Obviously, Vince is mad because it's my way or the highway, pal. Like, you got to do what I want. But then The Rock comes out, and he was kind of gone doing a movie, and he comes back, and basically, he thought he was going to be off for a while. And Vince is like, "Hey, Austin left. We need you back right away." So he immediately comes back, and he's the one that's kind of interjected in a little feud with kind of like Undertaker, doing a little main event stuff. He's going to win the world title back. Then he's going to feud with Lesnar at SummerSlam. But it's like he was the guy to step up. Hey, Vince, if you need somebody, I'll be there. Almost like showing Austin, like, you couldn't do it, but I'll be there and I'll show up. But it's funny, The Rock gets a great treatment where he gets to lose to Lesnar at SummerSlam, and they actually built it up. In Austin, they wanted him to lose with no build and a King of the Ring qualifier. He's not champion, so it's almost like they were treating Rock better at that point anyway, especially creatively. But Rock, everybody remembers that infamous promo where he says anybody who doesn't want to be here can get the F out. And that was when they turned from WWF to WWE. And Austin, obviously, that made him even more mad and made him not want to come back. To like, wow, they're taking shots at me. So that created some tension and some problems with Austin and The Rock because, wow, what the hell? Like, now you're basically attacking me, cutting a promo on live TV, telling me to get the F out if I don't want to be here. Like, wow.
Pierce?
You know what? I kind of like, like I was always a huge Austin fan growing up. You know what I mean? Like, so to me, seeing that, I was kind of like looking at it going, it's kind of a shitty way. Like, even back then, like when I was younger, I looked at it going, that's a shitty way for someone to handle their business. You know what I mean? Like, you're getting paid. You are the biggest star in this business. You know what I mean? Like, and for you to just go, I don't like what I have to do, so I'm going to go home. Like, bro, welcome to the fucking real world. Like, I'm sorry, man, but there's things that we all have to do in our fucking lives that we don't fucking like, but we just have to do it, or we try and make them better somehow. But you don't just go fucking, I'm going to take my ball and go home.
Yeah, he says he regrets it. That's his biggest regret in wrestling. He always says that, mentions that in all these interviews.
Yeah.
Like, and he doesn't mind jobbing to Lesnar. He said he saw he was a star. He would do it, but he said he wants to build it up. So to me, he's right and he's wrong. He's right that he should be regretful they shouldn't have walked out. I would have went to the show anyway and said, listen, I'm not wrestling tonight. I don't have my gear. You keep it in the car or whatever. But you just tell Vince, like, I'm not wrestling tonight. We can do something else, or you want to build it up. We have a confrontation. He beats me up something. I'm not in the King of the Ring qualifier. That's bullshit. I'm not having anything to do with the King of the Ring. There's other ways to go about it. You're Steve Austin, and you could do it. I mean, Hogan would do the same thing politically if you don't want to do something. We'll work it out. You literally sit with Vince in the office and lock the door until you come up with something that you like. You know what I mean? So he was wrong to walk out, and obviously he had some physical and mental problems going on too, which probably led to it. Like, fuck this, I'm out of here. Like, don't disrespect me. I'm the man around here, and you're treating me like shit. But then the same thing. There's no way in hell I would have done the job. There's no way in hell I'm agreeing to that. That is just the most asinine, stupid creative I've ever heard in my life. Like, what the hell, Vince? Like, come up with something better. But you don't walk out. You literally lock yourself in the room with Vince until he comes up with something you like.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing, man. I mean, look, it's just a decision he made to, because he didn't see I mean, it's just a story that they try to do with him and Lesnar. Like, for example, I remember one time me and a Roadkill, Danny Jordan versus the Baldies, we came up with an ending where we were put through a table. It was really a creative way to go through the table. And we're like, man, this is really going to make the match awesome, really take it to the next level. So when I took the bump right through the fucking table, trying to think, was it me or I think it was me. It was me that went through the table, and then thinking it was like, oh man, I did great. This is putting the boys over. Tommy pulled me to the side. He goes, dude, you killed yourself. I said, why? And he goes, that was a pay-per-view. That was a pay-per-view match. The way you ended it killed the storyline between you and Danny and Roadkill. So he was like, yeah, you should have, that was pay-per-view material. You should have not done that. Now we got to figure stuff out. Just by that moment, changed the course of the story with us. So, you got to think of it, you guys, I mean, not the way I think about things is that, okay, if I do this, how is it going to affect my career? Thinking I did good for the business. Like I was proud of myself that what I did, but the promoter, Tommy, he wasn't coming down on me. He just said, dude, you dropped the ball. It killed you. You guys were strong. You were the Baldies. Now we got to figure something else out to build you back up. So from Stone Cold's perspective, he's thinking like, these motherfuckers are not coming up with a great idea. They're killing my gimmick. I'm not letting that happen. Vince is not listening to me. I'm not creative. That's not my job. I'm the talent. They're the creative. They need to come up with something better. If not, pay me more. I'm out of here. Different view. I understand what he did that because what I did thinking it was good for the business, I fucked up and they had to reinvent the wheel to keep us strong. So you got to look at it from those perspectives. Yeah, what he did was wrong. He should have come. I mean, so many things he could have done, but I could see why, because he thought it was going to kill his gimmick. and nobody was helping him. Maybe he, like you said, he was under stress, he was on the gimmicks, he was going through so much. Maybe his brain wasn't able to come up with something creative. So that's why he said, look, what else do you have? I'm dealing with some problems. That shit is bullshit. What else do you have? That is your fucking job to come up with, and I'm supposed to agree to it. So, I mean, that's just my viewpoint.
Yep, terrible. Because if you think about it, Austin had, he follows the business. He knows what's going on. He sees it happen before where Vince just like not loses face or something, but he like feels like the guy had their run, and he's just gonna like, I'm gonna slowly job them out. I'm gonna slowly push them down the card. He's seen it forever. He's seen all these guys and what he plans to do and how he just moves on to the next guy because he saw it with Michaels and him. Like, oh, Michaels, you can't wrestle anymore. Okay, you're jobbing, and now you're garbage. See ya. And you just kind of forget about it, and the wheel just keeps on turning. So he kind of felt that with Lesnar and felt that with himself, but he kind of sensed it earlier when Rock is getting the big spot at WrestleMania with Hogan. Then when Rock even comes back, he notices, like, I know maybe he wasn't supposed to, but he comes back, Rock is the world champ, and he gets a nice build up and a nice match with Lesnar. He kind of saw the writing on the wall there, like, okay, I'm feuding with Ric Flair, older at this point. We're having like this little mini feud here. They're not really doing much with me. I'm not really being booked as the top guy, even though I am the top guy. I'm still the number one merch seller. I'm still the top draw here, but I'm not being booked that way. So in his mind, the paranoid rattlesnake that he is definitely thinking to himself, all right, they're moving on from me, but they're not doing it in a way that makes me look like I'm like the guy. You know what I mean? Like they're just having him lose on random Raw.
Yeah.
If they should have built it up, and that match against Lesnar, that should have been the main event at SummerSlam, and you build it up for a few months, and then Lesnar beats Austin there. Exactly the same thing they did with The Rock. So strange that Rock got that great treatment where he got the nice build up, and then Lesnar beats him at the pay-per-view, and Austin's losing on some random, not even promoted Raw. Like, what the hell? So just goes to show you that Austin felt disrespected, and he wasn't really high thought of by Vince, which if you really look at it, wasn't. Like, what the hell were they doing with him? Like, that's really the best they can come up with Steve Austin. Like, they literally were treating him like he was like Bob Holly or like just like a mid-card guy. Test RVD, like just another one of the guys. That's not how you treat Stone Cold Steve Austin. You're top guy, the guy that saved you from WCW, the guy that helped you not go out of business, the guy who helped turn the tide. That's the way you treat him. Pretty shitty.
Okay, and think about it like this, Piers. I'm gonna throw an idea to you. And it's not making fun of you. I'm picking your brain because you're in the business, but you're not. All right, Piers, you're a ring announcer, man. You're doing great, man. We see a lot of potential in you. We have an angle. All right, what is it? All right, so you're gonna be in the ring, announcing. Undertaker comes out, right? He's standing there, your fans are going crazy, and he's having a feud because a feud with this gentleman. I don't know. Let's use Sean Waltman. Right, he's arguing with Sean Waltman, and you build a rapport with Sean Waltman because you've been putting him over, because you're a heel announcer. So Sean Waltman, leg blocks him, takes his leg from under him. Shit happens. Pierce, this is what we want you to do. Sean Waltman's gonna bring him to you. You're gonna climb up to the top rope. You're gonna grab the Undertaker by the neck. And you're gonna dive off the top rope and do a sit-down choke slam on the Undertaker. And then Sean Waltman pins him. That is great. Undertaker's like, that's bullshit. I'm out of here. That's not gonna fly. Not because of you, but think about it from the perspective. How do you see that as an insult? Do you see, not because of your height, not because of thing, but the way it's playing out? Like, it doesn't make. Why would he choke? You know what I mean? Do you see? That's what's insulting.
That's ridiculous. Yeah,
it's not making sense.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's what it is. So that's, you feel like, dude, you're insulting me. You're like, the way you're putting it into play is like, it doesn't make any sense. It feels like you're shitting on me. It does, we got to come up with something better for Pierce. I mean, I don't mind taking the fucking bump. I don't mind getting hit by him. But that shit ain't gonna fly. Him choke slamming me with my own fucking move off the top rope. No,
I'm laughing at that. How ridiculous it is.
But some promoters, they're like, man, because they start steaming. Oh man, this is great. I could see it because we're gonna make you a heel ring announcer. You're gonna team up with Sean Waltman, basically like his manager, his Paul Heyman. So I just have this is gonna be great because the way you talk, the way you hold the mic, I think this is $1 million deal. And then you're sitting across from the Undertaker while he's blinking at you like, John, that's right. Do you see the
Yep.
thing? He's gonna be looking at you, look at you, and then he's gonna look at the promoter like, is this really happening? I don't mind putting the guy over, but this is not making any fucking sense. This is killing me. This is killing my gimmick. I'm fucking out of here until you come up with something better.
Dude, there is no way in the world I would even sit there and agree to do that sort of shit.
Yeah, but you don't have no say. He has the power. Undertaker has the power. You're sitting there like, I'm gonna do what I'm told. But as you look at Undertaker, he's just like, I side-eyeing you, and then goes back to the promoter like, I mean, John, am I going too far-fetched? I mean, or do you agree?
I kind of agree with you. Like, just like silly stuff like that. Like Austin, for instance, in his head, he's probably thinking like something along those lines. Like, this is so silly and ridiculous. I want no part of this. Like,
I don't mind putting the guy over. It's just the way you're presenting it is not flying.
And it's funny that like the way they kind of twisted it was like, oh, Austin just doesn't want to put over Lesnar. And he said it like a million times. And he even said to Brock, like, I'd put you over in a heartbeat. I put you over a million times in a row, but you got to do it right. I was the biggest star of one era, and you're trying to build up the next star of one era. Like, you're not getting any mileage on it. And Lesnar beating him at that point just doesn't do anything. Oh, yeah, he beat Austin, but he beat him on a Raw that you're going to forget about. You build it up to a pay-per-view, you haven't beat him then there's a passing of the torch there. You didn't quite get that. Just absolutely ridiculous.
Boogaloo once said, Boogaloo knows me pretty well. And he's like, we were talking about a match where he was talking with Damian Dragon. It was an indie show with the Baldies and stuff like that. And the promoter's like, hey, we want to put these guys over. And DeVito was like, fuck no, I ain't doing that. And Louis said, Angel never cares. Just like when I say, hey, what you guys want to, I don't care. I just flow with it. The same thing. I don't care about putting you over. It has to make sense. That's all it is. I will put anybody over, but it has to make sense to keep me strong. I don't, I'll take the pin, I'll do this, but you got to make me look strong. And I don't mind. And Louis always say, yeah, Angel don't give a fuck. As long as it makes sense, he's down. He's always having fun. Because I'm all about having fun in the ring and making it sense. So that's all it is. It's just you have to make it make sense to, okay, I could roll with that. And that's, they just was kind of like, look like they just put a fucking shit sandwich together and they expect him to eat it. And he's like, man, that shit don't look appealing, But then when they did it to Mark Henry and they put shit in, he didn't notice there was shit in there. And then because they made it look appealing. Hey, that Subway sandwich looks good. Has a nutty taste to it, but it's pretty good.
Jesus.
We could talk about that one on a different show. But anyway, that's all. It just has to make sense.
But he really, if you look at it, he doesn't come back for like a year almost. It's many, many months down the road, and it's really to build up WrestleMania 19. So he misses from basically June to February. He doesn't make his return. So, 6 months or so of action here for Austin, maybe even 8 months, really. I mean, that he's missing of action that it's prime Austin years, or maybe the winding down of Austin. But you could have had so many feuds, so much integral stuff, so much good stuff with Austin that he just decided to walk out and knock him back, wasn't happy with creative. Vince and him just couldn't get on the same page, and they just, I don't know, like they were both holding their ground so strong. It was almost like there was no compromise when there kind of should have been. To me, it's like, okay, Vince, this guy was your biggest star. He helped beat WCW. Now they're kissing his ass nonstop, and I mean, that's what they do. I mean, and he still sells $3 million of merchandise a year and stuff. So it just shows you the power of Austin. But think about it, like, why didn't Vince just like give in? It's like he held his ground. Oh, I'm not giving up. I'm not giving in. I'm not giving you what you want. But like, there should have been some sort of compromise with Vince, and JR kind of kept having to be the liaison between them. Like, hey, you ready? Are you ready? And Vince almost waited for Austin to say he was ready. There was no kind of like, I'll meet you halfway. Vince was so stern, then Austin kind of had to come all the way back to Vince saying like, all right, let's work on something. Let's do something. Then he does the thing with Bischoff, which is not really a match, but he had this little match or whatever fight with Bischoff, and then he wrestles Rock WrestleMania 19 and he retires, and that's the end of it. But you missed months and months of Steve Austin that could have been a nice little swan song where he puts over Lesnar or whoever else kind of on his way out, but you only got the Rock match out of it.
I have a question though. We've been talking about Austin about his feelings and how he's reacting and shit like that. But what was Brock Lesnar's mentality from the time at that moment till now? Like his opinion back then compared to his opinion right now. What was your thoughts in regards to, have you heard any stories in regards of his attitude since he was green and he was a new guy? He didn't really have an opinion compared now that he's a star. Like now that I thought about it through the years, this is my thought. Pierce, you go first.
I don't think Lesnar really gives a fuck. I think he only cares about getting paid. You know what I mean? Like, I think he likes getting paid, and if it makes sense, I don't think he really holds on to shit like that, like about the business and the politics side of things. Like, he doesn't really seem like one of those guys. He and Austin seem to have had a pretty good relationship over the last 2 decades as well. So they've had many conversations on podcasts and different things where Austin supported him when he had his UFC runs and stuff like that. So I don't think Lesnar really has held any grudges over the years, because you can see that they've maintained a friendship over.
Well, it's not a grudge. It's just your thoughts. Like if he was just like, yeah, he did wrong. I could see his point. Or I mean, I know he didn't care about the money. He just cared about getting paid. That's fine. But you still have an opinion. Just like my opinion about the RVD match. I didn't give a fuck if you walked away, but I could see his point. But I was upset because he got paid. We did it. Same thing.
I think Lesnar, being a veteran now, would probably understand it to a certain degree. Maybe wouldn't have handled business that way. But, like, remember seeing the video, and I don't know if this was a work or shoot, but remember when Lesnar threw the belt backstage at McMahon after, I think it was after WrestleMania, the Universal title, a couple years ago. So, like, I think, there's always points of frustration. And I think at that level, when you're at that top level and you've got a high expectation on you, I think Lesnar would probably understand it to some degree, to be honest.
I feel like, too, he's probably, he's kind of green and new to the business, probably thinking to himself, like, wow, this guy won't shout to me. I wonder what's up with that. Not realizing that it's shit creative and it's a bad idea. But years later, obviously, he was like, oh, I understand. And he's totally right. As you start to mature in the business and understand the business, like, yeah, he's totally right. Imagine if they built up to Austin versus Lesnar, how much more that would have meant for Lesnar to get the win over Austin if they made it, with a big buildup, a WrestleMania main event. You know what I mean? Like, it could have been something way bigger than a Raw match. They got no mileage out of it when they could have gotten months out of it. They could have gotten huge pay-per-view buy rate out of it. They could have made huge money off of it. Whether it's SummerSlam or you want to build it to WrestleMania, that is a huge money match. Even today, 20 years later, people are still saying Austin versus Lesnar could be a big money match for WrestleMania and all this other stuff. And now, obviously, Austin is having this thing with Owens, which is a different story for a different day. It's awful that it's Owens, but if it was Austin Reigns, people are saying like that's a big money match. That could be a main event of WrestleMania. So it's still, people to this day are saying Austin versus Lesnar is a money match for Mania, and it's 20 years removed from when it should have happened in a big fight. So it's a huge misstep by WWE. They hugely missed out, and obviously Austin took his ball and went home, and he handled it poorly. But man, they missed out on a big payday with Austin Lesnar in this big, grandiose pay-per-view, maybe WrestleMania level main event.
Oh, it makes sense, man. It's just like you said, but like, it's just funny how just like Roman Reigns back then when we were shitting on him and the fans were shitting on him, and they're like, "Hey, we want you to get put over. You need to put over Roman Reigns." And people are like, "Man, fuck." Now it's like, yeah, I want to wrestle Roman Reigns, man. He's hot.
Yeah.
Because they did him right, man. They kept reinventing it. And now he's all with the all acknowledge me, the bloodline. Now it's interesting compared to the other shit that he's done with the fucking bulletproof vest. And I think he borrowed that from D'Lo Brown, that chest protector. But I'm just saying that it's just how the cards play out, man. You just have to make it make sense.
But imagine like your star power and stuff, and you built yourself up. You created really the Attitude Era. You turned the corner for the WWF, and they're like, oh, by the way, you're losing on Raw tonight, or in a week you're losing on Raw to Lesnar. Okay, build up. Isn't Lesnar the next guy you're strapping the rocket to? He's the next big thing. He's going to be getting the push, and putting Heyman with him. He's going to be the world champ. So I'm wrestling him on a Raw in a qualifying match for a King of the Ring tournament I won 6 years ago. Like, I can imagine Austin thinking, like, I'm the man around here and you want to treat me like shit. So I could see him being extra paranoid. Obviously, he didn't handle it right, but horribly, like, thought, like, from Vince, like, that would actually fly with him. Like, oh, yeah, you work for me. You'll just agree to anything I say, pal. Like, I don't think so.
But even like then, they could have easily done something different, like having Austin out in the ring doing a promo. Lesnar comes out, leaves Austin laying.
Right.
And then you go from there into a pay-per-view. And even if it's just a one-off pay-per-view, at least you've built to something where people are going to say, holy shit, we're going to see Stone Cold Steve Austin going up against, the next big thing, Brock Lesnar.
Yep. You got to build it up. I mean, think about it. If Lesnar's the next big thing, the next big guy, you build him up for The Rock, but you're not going to build him up for Austin. Like I don't know, just and like that point too, they were searching for. Like 01 is the peak. I mean, they're making so much money in 01 and 02. They were making money and still doing good, but not as good as 01. It seemed like that was the peak, and they're kind of going downhill. So you're searching for big matches. Who can you do? Who can you got Hogan in big matches? This you kind of doing all this stuff, and it's like the big match is Austin versus Lesnar and on a Raw. That's like you were searching for big matches. Like Lesnar's perfect guy. Even Survivor Series that year, Survivor Series. How about Lesnar Austin at MSG? Like, man, they blew it on that one.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Do you think that they put the build with The Rock and Lesnar as a kind of like a little bit of an fu to Austin after the fact?
Oh, absolutely. That's what it seemed like. To get the F out to Austin, Rock getting a nice little push, getting the pay-per-view match.
Yeah.
It seemed like
and
that.
Run with the belt, yeah.
Yep, which probably made Austin even more mad because he's probably like, that's exactly what you should have done with me, and you only did it with Rock because now you're trying to teach me a lesson. Like that's what it seemed like to me. Like total screw job there by WWE.
I was just looking at some stuff to see if I found anything about him, Brock Lesnar saying anything, but I couldn't find anything,
But also, too, Austin seemed like he had some other problems going on because, when he wrestled Rock, he was in the hospital, basically the day before, all these other problems. He always says, I forget what he says, energy drinks and beer. I forget what the mix was, but it was gimmicks and other stuff mixed in. It's not energy drinks, whatever he said it was. I mean, that's pretty obvious.
Oh, gimmicks.
Delicious. And he's wrestling The Rock, and you could see at the end of that match, which is great storytelling wise. But for the last 5 minutes of the match, The Rock has all the offense. So Austin almost seemed like he got worn out in that match. Storyline wise, it kind of makes sense. Like the young lion came up, he wore him out, he beat him up. But you could tell Austin gets no offense in for like the last 5 minutes. So you could tell he's kind of like dead dog tired, and he's not feeling it anymore. It's still a great match, but you could tell he's kind of exhausted. You wonder if just the years of wear and tear in maybe the gimmicks and all the other stuff was starting to catch up with him mentally and physically, where he's like, fuck it, man. If I'm going to come back, I can do one more match and that's it. Like if he's just like creatively got nothing for me, I got nothing to give physically.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it came down to a lot. I mean, like he was, burnt out at that time as well. And that's what he even allegedly said. And that's what, McMahon even said in one of the video interviews that he did. But, one of the things as well, during that time, Austin was married to Deborah McMichael. And, during that time as well, the police also called to attend, and there was a domestic violence order taken out against him because apparently, there was a domestic dispute and where Deborah got struck.
Yeah.
She should have not spoke out of line. No, just kidding.
Oh my God.
Man, one thing I hate about, domestic violence is that, and again, I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying, like, it's just that when shit pops off behind the scenes, you don't know what's going on, man. I've seen situations like my ex used to just get in my face and hit me and get on me and stuff. And I'm not saying that's what Deborah did. It's just very hard because it's just one side of the story. And I'm not saying what happened with Steve was, he didn't do it. What I mean? It's so hard to determine who's at fault. It's always the guy who's the bad guy, or, just there's a lot of crazy situations like that. But anyway, he had problems. He had gimmicks. I mean, that's very stressful when you're having a destructive relationship. Plus you're on the pills and stuff. Is really not helping out your situation. And then you need to think about your wrestling career. It's a lot on your plate.
Yeah, he supposedly he did some, I guess, anger management or whatever you want to say. He got some rehab for himself. He kind of did some training for himself. Apparently, cleaned himself up from the gimmicks. Obviously, he still drinks, but he cleaned himself up from the gimmicks. He got himself in order, but he said he was in a bad place mentally. And when you're the number one guy for that long, and they're relying on you for so much and relying on you for everything, and then all of a sudden, just like that, boom, it's over, and they're moving on to the next guy. You can imagine that messes with you mentally.
Right on, brother. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I used to, it's funny when I used to be on the road with ECW and I used to drive from wherever, and I'm just, from Vegas to New York, from New York to Vermont, just driving hours and hours. My ex-wife was always like, before I left, yap, 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 and just fucking drilling in my head. And then when you get in the truck and you got a 20-hour drive and you're pissed off, And that's stress. Then when you come back home for the same 20-hour drive back and you walk through the door, yap, 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 yap. It's fucking stressful, man. You're never home and you don't pay attention, which is my fault. There's a lot of things that I contribute to that situation, but I'm just giving you that little taste. Like when you're leaving, you're a 20-hour drive and you're pissed off and you got, your wife is on your ass or husband's on your ass. It's just so much stress in your brain that is just, then you got to perform. You got to clear your mind and be on your A game. Gimmicks, gimmicks, crunch, crunch, beer. Ooh, I'm relaxed. Yeah, it's your, your vacation away from the drama. So I've been there.
Remember Austin too, like when he was at the top of his game, Hogan would do the same thing. After the show is over, like when they're the main event, after the show is over, they would always do stuff for the live crowd. Hogan with his posing, Austin with the beer bash, Austin with, messing with the fans, talking with the fans. So they always went above and beyond and kind of did extra stuff for the fans. So he's not leaving that building. Let's say the show ends at 11. He's probably not leaving the building until like midnight. You know what I mean? Like he's one of the last guys out because he's the one, all the other wrestlers left. He's celebrating by himself with the fans and, he's doing the beer bash stuff. Maybe Shane McMahon or maybe some one random heels out there taking some stunners and stuff. But it's like he's the top guy, but he went above and beyond as the top guy to give everybody the go home happy. And then the go home happy after that, where, you're doing the beer bash and stuff. And I've been to live shows like that. I'm like, holy shit, what time is it? It's like 11:30 and he's still out there doing his thing and enjoying himself. So, I mean, he went above and beyond. Talking about being like the top guy. He like proved it and then some.
It's funny when you become main event, when you become a curtain jerker, you're like, man, I wish I was the main event. You feel down on yourself. Then when you become main event, you're like, motherfucker, I gotta stay here till fucking midnight. He's like, and the guys are like, who are seasoned veterans, like, yeah, I'm match number 2. As soon as I'm done with shower, get dressed, I'm gonna go to Outback, have a couple, and just kick it. And you're like, fuck you.
Yeah, it truly is lonely at the top. You think about that because they would say Austin a lot of times would travel alone. No, sometimes he had some travel partners, but a lot of times you travel alone or be by himself, or he'd be the last guy out of the building by himself. So he'd really kind of just be lonely. So literally, he's at the top. It's very lonely at the top. I can imagine the thoughts going through your head of like paranoia, keeping that spot, and all that other stuff. But it's like, wow, I'm kind of on my own island here.
It's funny. When we did the show in New York City, it was the Baldies and stuff and Fandango just recently. And when we show up to the show and we're sitting there and I'm like, yo, and I asked Fandango, yo, who's the main event? And he goes, I am. Oh, yes. And he's just like, yeah, I know. Because nobody wants to be main event because you're the last one to leave. And you want to go back to your hotel room and shower, relax, and enjoy. Yep. And, we were so happy, like, yeah, fuck that. We're not the main. What, we're number 3? Yes. We're done. We're out of here.
It's so true because many years ago I was working with Tito. He's still doing the veteran thing, but they had him as the main event, and he basically was like, he made a good point of it too. He's like, if I did the intermission main event, it'd be better to sell the gimmicks. I'll go out and do that at the ring. And like he made like a good point of it. So the guy actually changed it and put somebody else on last and put Tito in intermission main event. And he turned to me, he's like, oh, thank God, right after intermission, we're out of here. And I was like, yes, this is great. Like he didn't want to be there the whole time, but it made sense what he was saying of getting out of there. Yeah,
selling the gimmicks
and telling the gimmicks at intermission. Yeah, it made perfect sense.
It's all logic, man.
Yeah, but I could see like the WWF guys, like they want to get to the next town or they're working somewhere, like got to catch a flight or whatever. You're Austin. You're probably one of the last few guys remaining until midnight. You're getting your stuff, taking a shower, and getting out of there, and you might be by yourself.
And you just hit the nail on the head on that aspect when you're in the main event and you say you got to get to the next town, and the next town is 4 hours, and you have to drive to the next town to your hotel.
Yep.
So you're like, fuck, it's midnight. I still have to fuck it, I ain't showering, fuck it. Yeah. And then you pack your stuff, and then you gotta drive 4 hours to the fucking hotel, so then by the time, so midnight, so let's say you leave at 12:30, you get to the hotel at what time?
4:30
plus you gotta empty your bag, air out your gear, so you gotta lay that shit out, shower before maybe stop to get at least something to eat, and then you gotta be at the building at noon. And you got to get to the gym. Fuck, I got to wake up early because I told McIntyre I got to meet him down in the lobby and he was the third match because we got to go to the gym and then hit it to the fucking to the building. Stress.
Yep.
Yeah. it's a lot, man. No, people don't see that. Oh man, it's great, but when you put it in that perspective, you're like,
but imagine being Austin, just spending hours out there covering yourself in beer and then getting behind the wheel of a car to drive and be like,
that's where you got to shower because you don't want to smell like beer. Have you been drinking, sir? Yeah, you don't want that drama.
Yeah,
or somebody else driving.
Yeah, imagine that, like I saw you on TV. You had like 12 beers, Steve. Imagine that. Holy
12, shit. Come on, man. That 20, I think.
Yeah.
Or if you're driving with somebody and they're like match number 2 and you're the main event, so you're the guy like, man, I gotta sit here through the whole day waiting for him. Not mad at him, you're just like, man, I gotta stay here all day. Fuck, shit. Let me go to catering. Shit like that. Just how it is, man. But anyway, final thoughts.
I'm kind of with Austin on this one. Although I think he handled it wrong on the walkout, really, and he should have worked with Vince and probably locked himself in a room with Vince and figured something out creatively. In the scheme of things, I am with him for the fact that the creative was absolutely terrible. He deserved better. He was the big star. He was the one that took WCW out with the Attitude Era. He was the top dog. He's the number one guy, number one merch seller, the number one ticket seller, the number one draw. Everything predicated around him, and to be treated like that, where like, okay, you get Scott Hall at WrestleMania, it's a big match, but it's not Hogan Rock. Then you're in like a feud with Ric Flair, but this is not Ric Flair from the 80s and 90s. This is, Ric Flair and winding down his career. Then they're not really doing anything with you. You kind of treat you like you're an afterthought, and they want you to lose randomly to Brock Lesnar, the next big star, on a random Raw for a King of the Ring qualifier with no buildup. So to me, he's absolutely right. Stick with your guns. You're the number one guy. You're the number one draw. You're the top star in the company. You're not jobbing to the guy without buildup. You needed to be at SummerSlam, Survivor Series, WrestleMania, whatever it was. He kind of got screwed on that aspect from creative. Vince was being kind of an asshole about it, being a stickler. He wouldn't compromise on it, which was stupid, and obviously he probably regrets that too. But definitely Austin could have handled it in a much better way. But hey, he's the man. He's Stone Cold Steve Austin, and it's hard to fault him when you get that shitty of creative offered to you.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, my final thoughts, I agree with Austin. Like I say, he should have handled it differently, but I see his point because I've been there, done that. It's very difficult. It's very stressful, and it kills your gimmick. So you get, it's just that, I mean, I don't feel bad for him. He should have been more invested and try to, like you said, lock himself with Vince and say, we're not leaving this room until you come up with a better fucking idea. So I'm not doing it. And I mean, I totally understand where he's coming from. It kills his gimmick, man. I mean, but he should have handled it differently. Pierce?
I agree with a lot of what you guys said. I just think as well, he should have also gone, you know what? I don't like this. What about this? Like, for him to go publicly, being a main eventer at the time on their Bite This show and publicly stating that creative sucks and it's downright bullshit and all this other stuff, I think that that's a bad way for him to do business at the time. I think he could have handled himself a little bit better. I understand the frustration of obviously having been put in the spot that they proposed for him to do. But I agree with what you guys say. I think he could have handled himself a lot better. But again, I think he should have come with some bullets in the chamber and said, hey, what about this? Bang, bang, and fired out a couple of ideas. Being that he was that top level star, that top level performer, he could basically throw out ideas and say, hey, this is what I want to do. You know what I mean? I don't want to do this. What about this? And that, by all accounts, what was said, that was never the words that was ever said. So,
yep, could have some sort of compromise there. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Well, I mean, like I said, man, this is a good topic, good idea. Also, I want to give a shout out to Shad Gaspar for getting the Warrior Award. It's well deserved. I mean, and I'm not saying it's too late. It should have been done a long time ago. But I'm happy that at least he was acknowledged in regards to that. I just wanted to put that out there due to his hero. I can't even say it, John. Heroism.
Yeah.
Heroism.
Heroism.
See, I was gonna say heroin.
Did you see his wife's speech?
No, dude. I didn't get a chance. I was gonna maybe catch it a little bit.
Oh man, I sat down and watched it with my wife, and as you know, she's not a wrestling fan at all. And like once I would told her the prelude of what had happened about his passing and everything like that, just before they did the induction, and then I explained who JTG was, who walked out and everything like that. But the speech that his wife did was absolutely one of the most beautiful speeches you'll hear, and it was amazing, heartwarming, and brought a tear to my wife's eyes.
Yeah, very, very good. And his
Yeah,
wife,
very good.
Stunning too. Beautiful woman. Very beautiful
Absolutely.
woman.
Yeah, very beautiful woman. But anyway, man, for you fans out there, we do appreciate you being on case number 104. Am I right?
That's it.
104, man. Tune in next week. I mean, we definitely going to have a lot of good topics to talk about, but definitely we do appreciate you supporting Wrestling with Tragedy, and we'll catch you guys next time. Pierce, get well. John, I know you're busy. You're always on the move, interviewing people. Definitely check out Two Man Power Trip. It's definitely one of the greatest shows out there. Not because he's my friend, it's because it's really good. And we'll holla if you hear me.
This is Vince Russo's The Brand.